Is Louis Tomlinson the most underrated and underappreciated member of One Direction? I'm Dan, hi, and I want to talk about pop culture stuff that interests me and you. So today we're going to talk about Louis Tomlinson and his career in One Direction and as a solo artist. Now, we all met Louis Tomlinson in his iconic X Factor audition. Oh, it's what you do to me. Yeah, it was a rocky start. But then he went on to be in one of the biggest boy bands on the planet. They started on the X Factor. They performed week after week on the X Factor, somehow not winning, but they did come third. And their video diaries were a huge part of us getting to know the band through their camaraderie, their jokes, and their general personalities.
We're all pretty shocked that Adam was in the bottom two. Sorry.
No, Jimmy protested.
Louis Tomlinson was the oldest of One Direction, and he quickly consecrated himself as the funny one, making all the others laugh, even when his jokes weren't that funny.
Why did the mushroom go to the party?
I don't know. Why did the mushroom go to the party?
Because he was a fun guy.
Oh, God!
From the beginning, Louis was somewhat of a disruptor, and in interviews and in the video diaries, he'd often be the loudest, the most vocal, making the others fall into fits of hysterics, while the interviewers tried to get some sense out of the five young men.
Hi, I'm Niall. I'm Harry. I'm Zane. I'm Liam.
And I'm Jennifer.
Early on, he established himself as quite the style icon, with his striped t-shirts and his red chinos, all topped off with some lovely suspenders and a Frankie from the Saturdays haircut. But his talents extended far beyond just his eye for fashion and his vocal abilities, because he was also quite the songwriter, and he wrote on most of One Direction's songs, and in his own words, remember, if it's by One Direction and it's a banger, I probably wrote on it. Even though One Direction were the biggest boy band of their time, we all know what happened, and just 5 years after forming, Zayn announced he was leaving the band, and just the next year, they announced they were going on hiatus. It's been 7 years! We now know from interviews and from his documentary, All of Those Voices, that Louis struggled when One Direction came to an end, and he couldn't really see where he would go as a solo artist because he'd been so used to being part of a group.
And I kind of had to learn on the job who I am really as an artist, because I'd only really looked at myself as, the lad in a band.
However, he had a successful launch to his solo career, with singles such as Just Hold On with Steve Aoki, and Back to You with BB Rexha, and of course, the classic that we all love, Miss You.
Shit, maybe I miss you.
His fans knew that he was working on his debut album, and it eventually came out in January 2020. Yeah, bad timing. Because he started his world tour, and after just 2 shows, he had to postpone it due to COVID.
Everything is great, everything is fucking great.
But one thing that was positive about 2020 is that we all had time to discover music and to find new artists, and One Direction across social media, TikTok, suddenly became really popular again, and lots of people were discovering the band for the first time, discovering the 5 members of the band for the first time, the relationships and friendships between them, and of course their solo music. But when there was some semblance of normality back in the world, the Louis Tomlinson World Tour ran from February to September 2022, and he announced he was going to be releasing his second album, Faith in the Future. Now, one important thing to note here was that Louis Tomlinson didn't really get any radio support, especially in the UK, but I've heard globally as well. He's just not played on radios very often. And even though this happened, and even though he announced his new album, he had a single out and everyone was celebrating his songs, the radios refused to play him. There were even occasions when radios had interviewed him, but still refused to play his music for some reason. Now, there are lots of theories as to why Louis Tomlinson is potentially blacklisted by radio, some of these being that he was too disruptive, that he broke a contract with Sony, and Sony have been in charge of his promotion ever since. I'm not going to get into that right now. All I will say is that despite all of that, Faith in the Future got to number 1 in the UK, and they still didn't play the single. And just a few weeks ago, Louis Tomlinson ended his second world tour, Faith in the Future World Tour, and he played London O2 Arena, and it sold out, and I know that he said it was one of the highlights of his career, and we were all so proud as fans that Louis Tomlinson has had so much success on his own when we know that he struggled to comprehend how a solo career could even happen for him. And now he's flying very, very high. And this isn't even to mention the Away From Home Festival, which he put on for free in year one, and he has taken that around the world. We don't know where it's going to be next year, if he's going to do it, but it's part of his repertoire of things that fans look forward to. And also he's announced that he's going to do so many festivals that we just won't be able to keep up. And I'm going to one next year because he's playing Victorious, which is in Portsmouth, and literally, they announced it and I bought a ticket immediately. And I'd love to be able to follow him around the world, but I can't do that. But I know I've seen people are. Like, he has a dedicated fan base. And he's deserving of it, He is such a positive influence in the world, and he's always been the shining light of One Direction. He kind of protected the others in a way because he took a lot of heat when it could have been directed at other people. And like we said, his songwriting is next to none. Some of the songs that he wrote for One Direction, he isn't wrong. They're all bangers. I'm going to cheat and use my phone now, but he wrote on songs such as AM, Alive, Back for You, Change Your Ticket, Clouds, Diana, Does He Know, End of the Day, Everything About You, Fireproof, Fool's Gold, History, obviously, Home, Irresistible. These are some of their biggest bangers. Little Black Dress, Long Way Down, Love You Goodbye, Midnight Memories, obviously. The whole of Midnight Memories was so Louis coded, it was unbelievable. Night Changes, No Control. We all know that he wrote No Control, don't we? But yeah, Louis Tomlinson was such a core member of One Direction, and I know they all were, and I know Liam Payne wrote on a huge amount of songs as well, and Harry and Zayn and Niall had loads of input on the songwriting, but also their vocals and their publicity that they helped form with One Direction. It was all a perfect storm, and it all happened at a time where Twitter was on the up and Instagram had just been released, and it was the first time, I think, and it's like my Roman Empire, right, that One Direction were on a British talent show. So they should have only really been seen by British people, right, and they would have been in the past. But because of the rise of social media, it all kind of came together, and people were watching their video diaries from across the world. People were watching their X Factor auditions and their X Factor performances from all across the world. So by the time it came to releasing What Makes You Beautiful and Up All Night, they were known worldwide. It didn't take a lot for them to break America because they'd already kind of done it. And that's a flex, right? But every One Direction fan, old, new, still here after all these years, or just recently discovered them, has a huge respect for Louis Tomlinson and his involvement in the band, because really, they couldn't have done it without him. But it does feel like, from a fan's point of view, that he just doesn't get the recognition he deserves as a solo artist at the moment. Him not being played on radios feels so disappointing when we know that his songs are up there. They are just as good as all the other members of the band, but he just doesn't get the airtime. What can be frustrating sometimes is that you see people across the internet, across TV, across radio, across all platforms, talking about and celebrating live music and celebrating releases of albums. Everyone's talking about all of these things, and it gets a lot of traction, right? Because these people have all got a huge amount of fans. So why don't they talk about Louis? Something I find really interesting about Louis' fans as well is they're kind of a couple of different categories, and there seems to be a lot of disagreements as well among them. But I think what happens is that solo fans who weren't fans of One Direction, who aren't fans of One Direction, because One Direction's music sounds very different to Louis' music, especially Faith in the Future, and they kind of believe that we should leave One Direction in the past and let Louis fly away from it and fly solo, because he deserves a solo career. He deserves recognition on his own as a songwriter, as a vocalist, as a musician. And I feel like it's been enough time now since One Direction disbanded that we don't need to ask them about it in every single interview. Every question doesn't have to be, do you speak to the other boys? Do you miss them? Have you got a WhatsApp group? We love to know it, but also it's good to let them have an opportunity just to talk about themselves. And there are a subset of his fans who are absolute One Direction fans, have always been, have been back in the day, and they crave knowledge of what the band are doing now. I'm one of them. I'm kind of between all of them, to be honest. I can see all the sides of it. But it's fascinating because he obviously loves One Direction. He loved his time in the band, and he owes it all to One Direction. He's said that before. He's very aware of that. But the way that he's been treated by the music industry since the band ended is disappointing. And you can see that he must be so frustrated to be releasing good music with amazing lyrics and still not getting the recognition that he deserves. But whatever fans he has, they are all incredibly supportive. It's probably the most supportive fan base that I see, because he doesn't do much that causes criticism. He doesn't say much that is controversial, you know, and he'll say things that on Twitter, on Stan Twitter, that kind of get a big reaction about various things. But he is a very safe person. His fan base is made up of a lot of LGBTQIA plus people, because he is such a safe person. Like, you feel like he is a warm hug of a man. Do you know what I mean? And then his music as well is just, it resonates. And the lyrics talk about themes and talk about relationships and talk about love in a way that is so unique to him.
You're the shiver that I can't shake. You're the habit that I can't break.
And that comes from, you can feel some of the songs that he did for One Direction coming through as he does his solo music, because it's him and he is giving his heart and soul to these lyrics and to these songs, and it's safe, but also it's fucking sick. I could talk for hours about how much I love Louis Tomlinson. I love that man, I do. Like, we're a similar age, we both were brought up by women and surrounded by women our whole lives. I feel like I've got a lot in common with him. Like, I feel like if I met him, we could have a good chat over a pint. Do you know what I mean? All the boys in the band, I relate to him so much more than the others. And like, I talk about Harry Styles a lot, I talk about all of them a lot. But Louis is my man. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's my boy. I will protect that man to my death. Not to be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic or anything. And I was speaking to someone the other day who knows that I'm a fan of One Direction and all of the 5 individual solo artists, and who doesn't really follow it, never really followed it. They're a bit older. And they were saying, like, who's the one that, they couldn't remember his name, and I was like, Louis. And they're like, yeah, he's not doing very well, is he? He's not done very well since leaving the band. And it blew my mind, because to me, like, he's so successful, he's achieved so much, but it's not spoken about. Like, the fact that he did these sellout shows and he's done these 2 world tours, he did a free festival just after COVID and everyone was celebrating it, and he's doing the festivals that support smaller artists, the people that support him on tour, on stage. Some of them are smaller artists, unsigned artists, like only the poets. Do you know what I mean? They've come so far since I saw them support Louis Tomlinson. He is out here doing his utmost to support so many different people, to support his fans, and he is nailing it. He is doing such a good job. And yet the general public have no idea, because it's not spoken about. And we get into these bubbles on Twitter, on TikTok, you know. I get loads of content about Louis Tomlinson. I share loads of content about Louis Tomlinson. But I think the only people that are seeing that are fans of Louis Tomlinson. Unless there's a viral moment, like the chicken nugget incident, or when he's run into the barricade and they're tearing his top off. Like, those things get more seen by, like, maybe old One Direction fans who aren't fans anymore, who don't follow the other boys as much. But the general public ain't seeing it. And it's so frustrating. And I'd love to interview Louis Tomlinson. Like, my dream person to interview would be Louis Tomlinson, because I bet he is so content. I bet he is so proud of himself and happy, and I bet he feels successful with what he's done as a solo artist, because, you know, I know he's talked about it before. His lack of confidence when the band broke up really shook him. And he, like he said, he didn't know what direction to go in, no pun intended. And his singles that he released, Stevie Aoki, BB Rexa, they're nothing like the songs on Walls, and they're definitely nothing like the songs on Faith in the Future. Like, he's found his lane, and it's a bit of Britpop. Like, Common People is one of my favourite Louis Tomlinson songs, and his accent and everything about it just makes it perfect, in my opinion.
Common people, nothing's changed. You're the strangers singing your name.
And he has done that all on his own, with less support, less marketing support, less support from, you know, external media platforms. He's done it on his own with a small team of people that he trusts and his fans. He's done it with his fans. I think that's what he'd say. But I'd love to ask him. I would want to ask him if he could look at himself now from an 18-year-old lens, when he's sat on those stairs doing the video diaries and he's looking ahead and he sees himself on his own on stage, wearing vests, getting his top torn off by his devoted fans, singing songs that he wrote, that he loves, that he enjoys, in his accent, being his authentic self, not having to hide behind suspenders or behind a fringe. Do you know what I mean? I'd love to know how he perceives that through his younger lens. I feel like this is just a love letter to Louis Tomlinson, and I'm fine with that. I'm so fine with that. Like, I love the man, and I know that most of the people watching this will probably love Louis Tomlinson too, because I can't imagine it will get out beyond his fan base. If it does, go and listen to Walls and Faith in the Future. Like, you missed out. You're missing out. But I just hope as he settles into being a solo artist even more in the next few years, as he releases his third album, which I'm sure is going to come out really soon, I just hope he continues to get the recognition he deserves and gets more of it. And I hope whatever deal is going on with these radio stations and with media outlets that just don't ever talk about him and don't ever share his art, his music, his work, his good deeds. Like, I hope that changes soon, because Louis Tomlinson deserves the world. They all do, okay? All of One Direction deserve everything, every success. But this ain't about them, this is about Louis. So that is my love letter to Louis Tomlinson. If he ever wants to chat, so I can ask him the real questions, you know where I am. Imagine. No, don't imagine. No, but imagine. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Leave me a comment. Let me know what your favourite Louis Tomlinson song is. I am going to do loads more of videos like this where I just talk about things that I love and do little deep dives into certain areas of all of it. And yeah, let me know what else you'd like me to talk about with Louis Tomlinson, or with any of One Direction, or with any of pop culture, because I'm open to it. And I want to talk more on here because it's fun. But you can follow me everywhere at Dan Cascio on all platforms. And if you want to hear me talk even more about things that aren't to do with pop culture, I have a podcast, which I will link in the description below. All right, now get back to that thing you're procrastinating from. All right, I'll see you soon. Bye.